have a very special guest for you tonight.
Hello, we've been expecting you.
This is not a test. Your government and corporate overlords have implemented new measures for your own health and safety. We are just following orders.
Everything is going to be fine.
I'd like to introduce...
Welcome everyone to another If by Whiskey. Mark, you got to go bye-bye. There we go. Jake, I screwed up again, man.
Hey, it's
How
all
you
right.
doing?
That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help.
You're here to clean up the messes, man. Here to clean up the messes. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How are you? You know, I got shout out to Jason for that intro. Every time, just like sets the mood.
I am so vibing it, and we get to talk to Mark about it because Jason was on Mark's show too. So I'm excited about that, man.
Yeah, that's the main one I
How's
caught. Well, what's new
how's
with
your
you
week,
this
man?
week?
Well, this week was awesome for me. So I have to share. So we got a new dog. So he's a terror, but we love him. But that meant that my girlfriend had to stay home Saturday while I drove to Vegas by myself on Saturday and drove back Sunday morning. So I drove up Saturday morning, drove back Sunday morning to go to a Marketer on the Run event run by Remzo Martinez. Everyone go to Marketer on the Run, Remzo Martinez. He's an awesome guy. He will be at Freedom Fest. By the way, he is going to have a day one launch party for Freedom Fest. We are all
nice.
invited. Yeah.
So what is
we're
that?
all-
Like a 3-hour drive for you?
It's about 4.5.
Oh, okay.
So
That's
it's not
like
bad.
that's what
4.5
it
to
was
5.
for me.
Yeah, it's totally cool. It's actually a really good drive. But I had that. Then I got to meet Remzo's cousin. His name is Cam Darling. So whenever you go to Tao nightclubs, that's Marquee, Tao, Hakkasan, all those places, go to talk to Cam Darling. He will hook you up, tell him you know me. I basically got up at 6 a.m. on Saturday, drove up, went to bed at 5 a.m. on Sunday, and then got up at 7 a.m. and drove home. So
Cam
and
Darling.
no drinking.
Cam
no
Darling sounds like the name of somebody who runs nightclubs.
Doesn't it? He's like, I'm Cam Darling. And he is a gorgeous specimen. That
Is
man,
he?
just so shout out to everybody there. Thank you very much, Juliana, Remzo's wife. You guys threw together a great Christmas party. It was really great to see some people, and we're gonna have some people on from that. So I'm really excited.
That's cool, man. No, it's
How about yourself?
It's been an interesting week so far. We're in one of those 2 or 3 of those atmospheric rivers, they call them. Just backed up, just storm after storm after storm. There's a levee broke about 20 minutes away from the house today, so there's roads closed, and our power was flickering earlier. So I was like, shit, I wonder if I'm going to get to do the show. But if I just drop off instantly, you'll know the power went out. But no,
Well,
man,
we're glad you
been
can
a
make
good week. The only other thing is, it's another week that we're paying the Taliban $45 million a week. So that just keeps on ticking. And every week I'm just going to keep remembering that.
Yeah, well, how else are we gonna have East if we don't support terrorism? Jake?
Yeah.
How else are we gonna have the stability that we talk about, man?
We don't even have stability with people talking about the Middle East, man. Did you see the wars with Tim Pool and Candace and Ian? Everybody's at each other's throats.
Dude, he dropped the C word on a podcast.
I know. Well, I do that a lot.
You
but
can't
I'm not Tim
can't
Pool.
take that. Yeah, but you can't take that back. Like, you just cannot take that one back ever.
No, he was a little
I don't know.
upset. He was a little upset for sure.
Yeah. And I have no dog in that race other than I'm seeking truth. Anyone who doesn't want to ask questions, I am suspect of. That's just real simple. So anyway. So what do we got today, my friend?
We have Mark Maresca, the host of the White Pillbox show, coming on, and
Yes.
I'm excited to talk to him. I watched the episode he did with Jason. We're going to be on his show, I believe, next week.
On the
and
18th.
yeah, I to his brand of podcasting, but I will say that the thing that strikes me so far, or thus far, is the whole theme of like the white pill, because everything, it's so easy to get black pilled. I heard blue pilled today. I was like, what's blue pilled?
It's got to be the Democrat side.
I'm obviously aware of being red pilled. But yeah, I think it's an interesting concept, and I'm really looking forward to talking to him and getting to know him, and having him bring some sunshine to my rainy week.
Yeah, well, without further ado, Mark is a long-term anarcho-capitalist and host of the aforementioned White Pillbox podcast. The podcast uncovers grounded, real-world reasons for hope as the world transitions to free societies. His websites are youtube.com/@thewhitepillbox and markmaresca.substack.com. Let's pull you up here, Mark. Welcome, sir. How you doing, Mark?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. Mark, hi, Jake. Hi, Whiskey audience.
Welcome.
It's
So
really great to be here.
this is how we came across each other. It's the craziest thing for me. I was about to quit about a month ago. I was going to quit before Jake came into my life. No, I was about to
Am I
quit.
a rescue dog?
You rescued me. No, I'm the rescue dog. I'm the mutt that's been transferred to 3 different families now. So a gentleman reached out to me out of the blue. His name is Shaka Mitchell. And I'm like, who the heck is this Shaka Mitchell? Got me. He said, oh, he saw our podcast with Adam Heyman. So he reached out to us, and then I look him up, and the first podcast I come across is yours, Mark. And I'm like, who's Mark Maresca? And then I look at all the names. You had all these amazing names on. You had Walter Block on, for goodness sake. We mentioned that earlier. You had amazing names, all these people, huge hitters. You just had a 2-parter with Larkin Rose. And then that's just one thing. So I don't even know who you are yet. Don't even know you. I just meet Shaka. And then Jason goes on your show and doesn't tell anyone. He just posts it on Twitter, that son of gun. And he just says, I'm on Mark's show. So I'm like, wait a minute, that's the guy who was Shaka. And then that's the whole thing. So I'm just so glad that we had this cool, like, I think we're all open and we're all riding the current, and we're now finding ourselves leaves on the same current together. So welcome.
It's good to know that there's a lot of knots like in the world, and I'm in the middle of the knots somehow. But we're gonna have to untangle this somehow.
I'm more of a afraid
Beautiful.
not myself, but
Yeah, well,
Never
Shaka
afraid,
was
right?
great. I had him on. He's an advocate for for choice in education. And he's doing some awesome work all over the country. And then yeah, I've been lucky, I think, to like Mike Humer and Walter Block and Mark and Rose. I mean, but all of them are so generous with their time, and really it's a matter of just reaching out, establishing a relationship, and then seeing if you can work out a schedule. So yeah, I've been lucky that way, I think.
It's beautiful to see the messaging. We're really here to share the message more. I think we used to be much more stubborn about the purity of it, and now we're just like, can we just move the Overton window? You know what
there
I
we
mean?
go.
Can we just move the
Rich is
Overton
here.
window? So, all right,
Yeah,
Rich is
well,
in. So
this movement is really, really old. I mean, in terms of our age, like 50 years old roughly. I happen to be lucky enough to have been red pilled over to, this thinking at about 19 years old. So I'm right at my 50 year myself. So I've seen it. I've seen it from not the very beginning, but near the beginning. And so, yes, the early part of it was very much a lot about principle, which is good. I mean, they have to hone out the principles and work them out and so on. But then most of that time really has been very much messaging, different ups and downs in messaging too, because sometimes the messaging would be less principled, sometimes it'd be more principled. And so, it's been a shaky road messaging wise. But yeah, it's been a very interesting ride.
How long you been
I'd
doing your
love to
show?
hear. Oh, yeah, there you go.
So
How long have you been doing your show?
about 4 years.
Okay.
About 4 years ago is when I started the Substack, and I was only writing essays then. And then at some point along the way, probably about not quite 2 years ago, I thought, well, I could also make this audio. So I made it audio and I would post that on Substack. And then from there, it's like, well, I'm this close to podcasting. Let me give it a shot. So that was probably a year and a half ago, maybe, that I've actually been doing, podcasts where either I speak or I have a guest.
How long have you been a writer then your whole life and writing essays and things?
I've liked writing, but I haven't been a writer. Not really. I come from an IT background, actually. So if I've been writing anything, it's been code for like 40. I'm retired now, but yeah, I was in it since mid 20s, I guess. So yeah, I've had a long career in IT. But yeah, no, I was never really a writer. I wrote a few essays way back in the essays that didn't go anywhere because there was no internet. So there was really no way to get published. But then since I jumped onto Substack, I've pretty regularly written essays, but I'm enjoying the audio and then the podcast part of it so much that I really don't do the writing much anymore because this part's really fun and it does seem to get a reach. So this is what I've been doing.
No, this is fun. I would say, I mean, I need to dive in and read some of the essays then, but I would think off the top that obviously doing this, I mean, it's right off the top of your head. I mean, you obviously put together some notes and this is what I want to cover, but for the most part, like when you're just speaking, you don't really know what's coming next. But when you're writing an essay, I think you have the luxury of editing yourself and going back and kind of pacing what you want to say.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. Now, one of my recent projects was my Myth of Authority series. I did a 23-part series on my podcast, one episode per podcast. And it didn't start out to be a 23-part series. It was really just my effort to try to put together sort of a framework of what the belief in authority in statism means. It's psychology. I wanted to dig deeper because I noticed that there was really no one in this space who had really attacked statism from the psychological standpoint, at least not deeply. Larkin Rose has done this and has done amazing work on it. Michael Humer has touched on it, but that was about it. I wanted to get real deep into it. So I started it off just kind of spilling my thoughts out. But as I dug deeper into it, it got real interesting because I seem to be uncovering these nuggets of insights that were really white pilling. And so that ended up becoming a 23-part series. But if you go back to the beginning of it and contrast it with the end, you can definitely see it was not written ahead of time. It sort of organically grew as the topic sort of took me where it led me. So that was fun doing that. But as such, it's not a perfect cohesive collection really, like a book would be. It's just sort of what evolved along the way.
I think you just said the most unique thing or interesting thing I think I've ever heard. You went through psychology and found white pill moments from it?
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
I want to hear about these because I'm not going to lie. I may have a little bit less of an optimistic side, but I find as the more I dig into humanity, the less faith I have that you know what I mean? Because I see how easily we all, including myself, like I am completely as fallible as anyone else, you know? So could you share some of those little nuggets of white pills through this psychology moment? I feel free to go deep too, because we got all the time in the world. So
Yeah, sure. But before I do that, I want to make sure that when we're talking about these terms, we're talking about the same terms and the audience relates to it. So the red and blue pill concept, I'm sure you guys probably know that arises pretty much out of the movie The Matrix. Does that
Oh yeah.
resonate? Okay. So in The Matrix, as we know, there was a world of reality underlying the apparent reality. And if you took the red pill, you would be woken up to the real world. And if you took the blue pill, you were allowed to go back into the fake world that was really in your mind. And that those terms are used in this political context, at least in this libertarian space, to mean, well, if you're blue pilled, you're sort of just a normal person who grows up indoctrinated to believe statism is legitimate, that the government is legitimate. When you're red pilled, it's sort of a moment where you look at things in the right way to realize, oh, wait a minute, that's not the case. The state is not a legitimate institution. It violates consent. And as civilized people, we're really not supposed to do that. And yet it does. And that moment of realizing, oh, the state can't do that because it's just people, that means it's illegitimate. Boom, you've kind of got that red pill moment. And so that's the distinction, red pill versus blue pill. Out of that grew the idea of, well, once you're red pill, once you've, so to speak, woken up and this fog has been cleared in your mind, now your mind will tend to take one of two paths on your attitude about what the future looks like. If you're black pilled, it kind of means that you see the negative. You think there's really no hope. We won't see free society, likely. the government will get more powerful. They'll oppress us more. No, there's no hope. I'm black pilled. It's a depressing outlook. If you're white pilled, and this is how I define it, and I think folks like Michael Mallett and others would do this too. It's not that you're just like, yeah, boy, things will be great. Don't worry. No, it's not that at all. What it is you see realistic reasons for hope. You can point to something and say, you see that there? That's a trend that really shows that we have reason for hope, that things will get better and that we could reach free societies. So for me, the whole reason I started this podcast was I noticed that, I think you had mentioned this, there really isn't much positive that's mentioned in our space. We, the libertarians, do tend to notice the bad things because we are focused on a really bad thing, the state, and this belief in political authority. And so it's easy to just be black-pilled. It's easy to see the negative, the wars, the hunger, and the racial strife, and just get black-pilled from that. And so to me, I saw a space in this movement that was lacking, sort of a niche that wasn't filled. Nobody's talking about the hope that was out there, assuming there is any. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to devote myself to that. So I really devoted the content to not the normies. I mean, I'm glad if someone gets red pilled from anything I say, but really the purpose that I see in my work is for our team, for our tribe, the people already red pilled, give them hope, give them reasons to feel good. So I hope I didn't take too much of a tangent on that, but I wanted to ask you guys how close those definitions will align with your understandings.
I mean, you said it better than I would say it, but I'm right there on the same page with you as far as the definitions of those things. You know, it's funny. I was listening today to Theo Vaughn and Tucker, and Tucker made a comment about just being stuck in this kind of, like you said, this seeing the black pill and seeing the negative and being black pilled to the point where everything was just a problem. You know, everything you see is this, oh, another problem. And he talked about this moment, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was like this clarity where, and he says this was just a couple days ago. So where he realized that out of, you know, everything's cyclical, obviously everything has a beginning and an end. And his thought was, if we're coming to the end of something, and clearly we seem to be with the way that the state is going and the way that our government and our whole culture and worldwide culture is, but something beautiful will come out of that. And the change that's coming out of that and the positivity that's going to come out of something ending, even though we don't know what it is something to be, you know, hopeful and excited for. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but the way he said that, it kind of struck me. It was like, you know, it is so easy to get stuck on the negative and to get stuck on the, like, man, here's another, we're sending another 45 million to the Taliban this week, or we bombed another boat that we didn't give anybody due process, or, you know, all these things. It's so easy to get caught up in them. And I do. My wife will tell you I do. But it was a nice thought. It was, I don't know, reassuring is the word, but it was kind of comforting to think of, like, oh, okay, well then something is coming out of this. And there is this momentum among libertarians and ANCAPs and anarchists about really having a momentum to shape something in the near future towards what we, you know, towards free societies. And there's enough of a loud voice that I think if there's going to be a time, we have a time coming up. And there's so many people in this arena. You know, you got the Clint Russells, you got the Maj Tourés, you got so many people that are united in the same kind of cause, but such different people. And that really, I think, is the key to the strength of the success of the movement.
Yeah.
I've been my concern is the transition itself. Let's be honest. Like right now, great times. Coming out of it, great times. That thing in between, that breaking the eggs to make the omelet, that's not the fun times. I know never want to be in a transitionary. Right. Well, trust me, you got to invest in precious metals, gold, silver, brass, and lead, right? I mean, let's not kid ourselves. But I mean, the truth is like that's more the concern for me. But yeah, we are in a fourth turning, and what will come out of this is great. And to see these ideas now, maybe they can be foundational for the next iteration. That would be a great thing to see.
And I think
fingerprints of it.
it's very smart of you to point out that um, during any transition, especially a transition from a very terrible thing like slavery, right? Slavery ended at least in the United States in the, whatever, the mid 1865 in that era. But that was a very, very difficult time. In America, it manifested itself in a civil war. I realize there were other causes and dynamics going on, but that certainly was one of them. And so, yes, any transition can be very dangerous. And I would expect that there's always a chance that the state could do something really heinous in reaction to a transition. So we do have to stay grounded. It is always a risk that that could happen. But even here, the way I look at it is two ways. One is probably whatever they are going to do, if they're going to do anything, is out of our control. If they start a nuclear war because they want us to get into a war to try to get us all back into some kind of unified thinking, that's going to be real bad. But there's nothing we can do about that. That is utterly an asteroid type event for us. So for me anyway, I have to say, you know what? I'm not going to think about that. I literally am not going to think about the worst that they could possibly do because it's out of my hands. Just like with the asteroid itself. An asteroid could hit the Earth. It could. I can imagine it happening. Am I going to worry about that? I classify government doing something that bad in the same category, something I can't control. And as any psychologist would tell you, probably any therapist, you got to not worry about things you can't control. So for me, it takes practice a little bit, but you got to kind of put those things out of your head. Deal with the things you can control.
I'd rather have the asteroid if I get to pick.
Quick and easy.
Well, at least it's natural. I mean, at least it's not anybody's fault.
Exactly right. For me,
It's Bruce
the
Willis's
other
fault.
thing I think
What are you
about,
talking about?
whose fault?
Bruce Willis's fault. What are you talking about with the asteroid? If he
That's
can't
right.
save us, man.
Yeah, you're
But
right.
go ahead,
you're
Mark.
right.
You were
Poor
saying.
Bruce Willis. Yeah.
Yeah, no
But
kidding.
anyway,
How
for
about
me,
that? Yeah, with like what's going on with him with the dimension stuff, and it's unbelievable.
I know that I just saw
Must be all the head
an
trauma
article
from
on
all the stunts and stuff. Oh, you did? Yeah,
it.
tell
Could
us
be
about that.
he did a lot of his own stunts, I think. Did he? Or is he?
Yeah, I
I'm
think he
thinking of
did.
someone else. Thinking of Tom Cruise.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He and Tom
Yeah, he's
Cruise.
awesome.
That's the thing is, how is Tom Cruise still sharp? That guy does all his own stunts. I don't know how he doesn't have like some kind of
Scientology, baby. He's got all the.
So Mark, if I may, Rich had a question, a little bit about your background. He missed the beginning. So could you give us just a little bit about, you said you were a coder or you were in IT in some way?
I was a computer programmer and we did medical applications, and I happened to be with the same company most of my career. And I started out in the mid 80s. Well, actually, I'm sorry, I started out in 1980. And at that time, programming was like just sort of this new thing. And you can kind of get into it really easy as long as you were suited to it and you liked it. So there were a lot of jobs out there. So it was a pretty good market. It was a sort of a buyer's market for getting into it. And I was lucky. I just started with the right company at the right time. It was a startup, and I was just there forever. And we did medical applications, like I said. And I was a coder, not just a coder, an actual programmer, and we would design actual applications, medical applications. And that's really, that's my career, pretty much start to end. I retired now. I retired in 2021, actually. That's my career path. If you're talking about my libertarian path, that starts around 19 years old when I just happened to befriend somebody who at the time was what we would today call an anarcho-capitalist, which there were not many of them in 1975. I can promise you that. So my meeting this person through work, it was just through a work thing, was just random chance, and that got me interested in the ideas. And I started reading Ayn Rand and Murray Rothbard, Henry Hazlitt, Paul Mises, this classic stuff. And I mean, I was sold within weeks. It didn't take any length of time for me to realize that the state is illegitimate and this is, it's not right. So that's me. And then really it was just subscribing to magazines and things like that. It became a hobby more or less for that entire time, all the way up to right after 9/11, I would say, is where I kind of got disappointed in the movement. Because now for me, I understand that's I'm 26 years into this. And even though nothing was happening, the internet didn't exist to any degree at that time, it was still something that it was fun doing and learning and trying to tell others about it, even though I had very little success in persuading others. But after 9/11, I would say most of the libertarians I followed basically just turned pale. They got emotionally um, uh, traumatized, I guess you'd say, from 9/11, and they were no longer libertarians. They were right up there with, yeah, we got to bomb those Middle Easterners and all that. And to me, that was a real shock because if anybody was supposed to be principled and consistent, it would have been the libertarians. I'm not drawing or painting a fully broad stroke here. There were a couple that still remained principled, but not many at all, including
Not
some of the
many.
ones I
And
followed.
the one I remember was Pat Buchanan. If I remember, Pat Buchanan was probably the only one. And they were calling him an isolationist of all things. It's like isolationist,
Right.
man. Like, can you not separate non-intervention from isolationism? Can we not do that, please?
Exactly. I mean, that's third grade stuff there. Yeah, so I was so disappointed. And for me, again, after 25, 26 years of following that movement, it really turned me off to the movement, not to the ideas. I myself did not waver. But at that point, I kind of disconnected. I said, I don't want to follow this anymore because actually, honestly, Mark and Jake, I was convinced that trauma that they suffered was the beginning of the end of the movement itself. I felt that if they couldn't handle a crisis, then they're not going to handle the next crisis or the next. And I didn't want to sort of watch the slow death of libertarianism in 2001, 2002, right in there. So I just found other hobbies. I found other things to do, and I just completely, utterly disconnected myself from the movement. I didn't read any more books. I had pretty much consumed most of what I wanted to anyway. Again, I still believed the principles, but I just didn't stay in the movement. Fast forward to 2018. So we're talking like 16 years here where I was not paying attention to the movement on purpose. And I was looking ahead to retirement and I thought, gee, I'm going to have a lot of time on my hands or more time on my hands. So I thought to myself, gee, I wonder whatever happened to those libertarians and anarchists. Yeah, I wonder when the last one of them died out, except for me. Like, I really thought in my head if there was anything on the internet that might have been a sort of a record of when they finally gave up the ghost and they just all went statist. This was literally what I
Reminds me of
thought.
those graphics like when you have football teams and like they have the graveyards, the years that they died or whatever and stuff like that.
Seriously,
It just
died.
kind of I see this comical kind of whimsical way to put this together. When did it die?
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Almost like a grim, outlook. Like I wonder when they all died out. I did an internet search for anarchism and libertarianism in 2018.
And then
So
the
yeah,
FBI kicked your door in.
it was like Christmas morning. It was like holy moly. And not only that, but a good percentage of them were like hardcore anarchists. Like they weren't ashamed to say they were anarcho-capitalists. Like because during my time, the general attitude was, well, you sort of have to spoon feed people these ideas. You got to kind of give them to them in little doses, which of course never worked, or at least for most people didn't work. So for me, finding out that there were actual content providers that were like out there in your face and not ashamed to be anarchists was like, oh man, I know who I'm going to follow now. So I started following the Larkin Roses, and at that time, Dave Smith was very much more solid on these things. I think he still is to a great extent, but he's also political, and that sort of blurs it a little bit, and he gets a lot of flack. So, but at the time, it was fun listening to him because he was, to me, hardcore. So it
Well,
really,
he's insightful. I mean, regardless of what, he can find the problem. I mean, that's the beauty of comics. Comics' job is to push the pain and make it humorous. So that's such a skill to have.
I think he's part of the problem, isn't he?
well, you'll get people who say that, yes.
No,
I
I will say that I think to your point, Mark, watching something like 9/11 happen and then watching and I think the reason people say or used to say you got to spoon feed this to people is because life was good. On the general terms, life was good. It was easy. Like our country was, you could still raise a family on one paycheck into like up to the 90s. I mean, life was pretty good for the most part, at least where I was. So I think when it's easy, it's harder to sell people on this idea of non-intervention and the state is the problem. And now when things are getting tougher, it's almost an easier sell because there's people that go, oh, you know what, you're right. I'm seeing all these things in my own life, and maybe this is I don't want to use the word solution, but maybe this is a path towards, being able to actually have some freedom in our society. But to your point of when 9/11 happens and everybody kind of clams up and the fair weather libertarians kind of disappear, it really makes me wonder, back what we were talking about earlier, about the transition period. Like when whatever this is ends and we're in that transition to the new thing, that in between part, it's really gonna make people prove their salt. Like you're gonna see who really is like bought into this and thinking that this is the way to be, and who really just wanted to buy the t-shirt. And I think that's the part that's going to be very telling. And I hope we don't go through another 9/11. I hope we don't have a nuclear situation like you described, but something's going to happen, and it's inevitable that we're going to hit that transitional period. And maybe it's AI attacking us like Terminator. I don't know, but it's really going to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak.
I just had a thought too. Go ahead, Mark. I'll let you finish. Go ahead, Mark, and I have a quick question after that.
Oh no, I was actually just going to second what you were saying, but that was about it, Mark. Go ahead.
So I just had a really weird epiphany. Could Y2K and all the doom preppers, couldn't that have hurt as well? Considering 9/11 was only a year after that. Well, a year and a half, obviously, year 9 months. But remember Y2K? My dad was a prepper. My dad still has coffee from when he had it. He still uses it. You know what I mean? It's still like in his basement. It's not a joke. Like it's 25 years ago. So that could have been a part where a lot of these people were saying, they conflated this, anarcho-capitalist movement with doom preppers and like, kind of tainted it too, right? They kind of cross the particle streams a little bit.
That's such a good point. That's an example of that. And then you can look at almost any example like that where the public can easily get a misunderstanding of what libertarianism is. Like even to this day, you'll get people who think it means you want to have everyone smoking pot all the time. That's how it was literally when I first was red pill back in 1975. People would say, "Oh, you guys are the pot smokers." See, now here we are, 50 years later, and some people at least still think that's what libertarianism is. Now, I don't know how you fight that because that's just sort of the way things can be, right? If people get this little piece of a puzzle of what some philosophy is or for one some principle is, but they don't really have the whole thing, well, then they're going to take that little piece. Their mind is just going to do what it does. It's going to conceptualize it and expand on it and create this whole story out of what is just this one piece of it. And of course, end up with the wrong story. And then they go through their whole life with that wrong impression. I think that as a real uphill battle for the libertarians.
And I mean the term anarchy too. I mean, look what people used to think of the term anarchy. Like you're going to be out in the streets setting cars on fire. It's like that's not at all what that is.
Yeah.
Look at Piers Morgan talk about anarchy. I love watching Piers Morgan, for example, because he's this odd mainstreamer who allows like Scott Hortons and Dave Smiths on. It's kind of weird, but he's like,
Right.
"Oh, it'd be anarchy," and you're like, "Yeah, you mean freedom of exchange of ideas and information and goods and services? Sure, I'm all in."
I heard I got to catch up on him. I guess he just had Nick Fuentes on yesterday or day before, and this supposedly was pretty fiery. I gotta go back.
I watched it. It was good. Oh, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. Nick Fuentes is formidable. He is dangerous. They are gonna have to figure out a way to solve him, so to speak.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's so true. So even some things he says, you could pick it out and say, you know what, he's not wrong about that particular thing, whatever it might be. But then you look at some of the other things he says, and it's like, no, 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 that's a big no on that. And that's rough then, right? Because then you'll have a messenger like Dave Smith, let's say, who has had him on and who has probably tried to focus on the things that he says that you could say, well, yeah, the kid's got an insight on that. But none of that's going to matter because the other things this guy has said, point is, are so offensive that it's like, okay, it's tainted anything he could say that's good. This is the problem with communication and messaging is that it's a very, very messy affair. This is why I've often said the libertarians have an extraordinarily uphill battle. I know because I was trying to message all those years thinking, well, how else are we going to get these ideas out there? Don't you? Isn't that the only way? Of course, in the last year, as I've done this psychological analysis and as part of my Myth of Authority series, some of the insights that came out of that really call into question even those premises. And so now I find myself in this very interesting position of trying to dispense white pills that are even radical to the libertarians themselves. So messaging is tough.
Well, I'm curious to see Nick Fuentes in like 15, 20 years. I want to see like not the 27 or whatever he is. I want to see him when he's my age. And I really want to see if he's evolved on some of the sharper things. Cause to me, like you just said, Mark, like I'll listen to him and go, man, this guy, like he has some good insight on or he has a few good points, but then he pulls something out and I'm like, is that just inexperience in life or age, or is that just being provocative and because he knows it's going to get a response? But it's almost like he's another shade of like an Andrew Tate. Like they're two, two donuts from the same box kind of thing. Sometimes I think like Andrew Tate obviously is a bit of a, I don't know. I'd probably take 5 Nick Fuentes to 1 Andrew Tate, but they have a similar kind of appeal, I guess, where some of the stuff they say is like, oh, okay, this seems palatable or this seems, digestible. And then you get hit with like a right hook. You're like, what did you just say? Women or what? So I'm curious to see how he evolves.
Well, Tate is physically more formidable. So I'll take on 5 Nick Fuentes over 1 Andrew Tate or 5 over 5 Andrew Tates. First of all, I'll do that one. But to your point, you're right. The thing, though, is when I say formidable, I'm just saying he's sharp, he's witty, smart. It doesn't have anything to do with what I agree or disagree with any of his thoughts. But his points are rooted. It'd be funny, like we'll use the 19th Amendment, women not voting or something. He's like, does anyone think about what men actually sacrifice for that? They enter the draft when they register to vote. Women do not actually enter the draft when they register to vote. There was actually a sacrifice to this, first of all. Secondly, men are the ones who take bullets for their women, people. We are the shields. That is what we do. That is like core A1 number one job. So that's like one example, but he just says it in such a obviously triggering way for others to get the attention, I guess,
It probably is a lot of that. We have to be real and say, well, these are people who are, they're in this as a business. They are trying to monetize it. So clearly they have a financial incentive to try to get the clicks and try to get the eyes on it. It doesn't mean what they're saying is necessarily because of that, right or wrong, but it's a factor. To me, all of these characters are inconsistent. Because all you have to do really is listen to the sampling of what they're saying. Like you were saying, Jake, like, he might say certain things that you kind of agree with, and then suddenly he's got these opinions about races or history or women or whatever it is. And it's like, wait a minute, no, that's not it. And this is the beauty of libertarianism, is that it is a consistent philosophy, right? You own yourself. You own the tangible property that you've come into, possession, ownership of, justifiably, but that's it. After that, you really don't have the right to aggress against other person's body or property. That's so. If say Nick Fuentes is saying women ought to be what, relegated to this cultural position or whatever, it's like, okay, well, what if she doesn't want to? What if she doesn't consent? Okay, You better have an answer for that that's consistent with libertarianism to me. Otherwise, no, you're not consistent. And if they're
Remember, he was a Ted Cruz
inconsistent,
guy when he started. He's an admittedly look, the way we're at the messaging is we're like statist or not. There's no minarchist, like there's no minarchist gray area anymore, because minarchism will grow to statism. It just grows regardless. There is no entropy happen. That's how it works. Now that's not good or bad or indifferent, but that's where we have to really have these ideas and exchanges of ideas, in my perspective, you know.
Well, that's why
Right.
I want there to be room for a Nick Fuentes and an Andrew Tate. And I want there to be room for all these people to say, like, let their ideas out, let them be heard and be judged in the public square, so to speak, and sift through it, figure out what's in line with libertarianism, what's in line with true freedom and non-aggression, and what is, again, just provocative to get some clicks or to raise your profile.
And the danger with Nick, if I may, because he is so sharp. I mean, look, Piers is pretty much white bread with the crust cut off, right? Like the guy's basic. You could easily pick apart any of these guys. These journalists who were in mainstream media were not actual thinkers. They really weren't. They were just puppets. And when a guy who actually, not saying I agree, but when he has ideas that he actually processed and came to, much more dangerous, because it makes those people who don't actually have a thing, they don't look so formal against him. You need someone who's a thinker who can, who can really counter someone like Nick. That's what I would love to see.
And also for me, I guess maybe because I'm a little on the older side and I've been listening to this for so long, there's a point where it's like exhausting almost, because a lot of these ideas are recycled. They might be said in a different way, but there's still some nationalism around it, or there's some kind of collectivism around it. And it's like this again. And honestly, there's points where my mind it's almost like it's attached to a drone, and it kind of goes way up to the 30,000 foot, and I'm looking down and I see just a bunch of chattering chipmunks. They're just this, they're just saying nothing to each other, because all right, one's trying to convince another, and the other's trying to convince another, and other people around are trying to convince them. But the content of what they're saying is just the same old collectivism. And so nothing's going to happen with that. Yes, things will get worse or better or whatever, but that's not resolving it. That is not going to bring you to a free society. Not that. That's just chattering chipmunks. So it's very much Lilliputian. If you remember the book Gulliver's Travels, when the giant, because it's the land of all they were the Lilliputians. And they gave epic importance to the most trivial things. And in the book, it's like funny because they're giving epic importance to trivial. But to me, sometimes it really looks like that when I see some of these panel discussions. It's like, wow, this is really nothing happening here. You're not swaying anybody. No, you're just arguing. And so that's why I guess I'm attracted to libertarianism, because at least there's principle there. You can look at anything and kind of have a grounded, principled perspective on it, for me anyway.
That's probably why it attracts autists so much, because it's that like defined rule that everybody goes, oh, I can at least bank on that. I don't know if you know the phrase, there's only 12 notes a man can play. And it's a musical thing, because there's really only 12 notes that can be played. And it reminds me of what you're saying. Like some of these arguments, like there's only so many ways to recycle the same point and recycle the same idea and try and say it's always going to go back to those 12 notes. And to your point, Mark, is like if you have a principled view and a principle and the most basic, it's not a list of 10 rules. It's just a basic measuring stick. That really, you can look at any situation and any problem through that lens and be able to have a way out the other side.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. It really is. And it's also instructive, I think, because now we have 50 years of a movement that has tried any way we can think of to get these ideas across. And yes, there are a lot more libertarians than there were 50 years ago. I can vouch for that. That's nice. That's good. But as a percentage of the whole, it's not much of a dent, really. So you can look at it and say that's a pretty disappointing showing for a movement. 50, half a century, well, you haven't done better. It's like, what's going on? What are you missing? Either your principles are just wrong, or you don't know how to communicate,
The
or maybe
problem is you're
something
the
else.
third party. The problem is you're a
Yeah.
third party in a binary system. It literally is set up as a two-party system. I mean, Thomas Massey talks about it. He's like, it's literally built into the architecture. You go in this room or you go and hang out in that room. There's no other room for other people to hang out in. You got to pick one or the other, or you're standing in the hallway. That's it. That it's literally built into the system to have a binary structure to keep this exact same thing out. It's a spoiler. Come on, spoiler, really? Spoiler? That's such a silly term to hear when you're talking about a human being who's competent and has good ideas or something.
Maybe that's the thing though. Maybe when whatever the big reset or whatever it is, maybe that's the moment where there's an opportunity to not make it a binary system and to really maybe that's the moment when people are going to be like, oh, well, this is the message. And maybe that the message will convey easier then because there's there's less interference. There's just more signal and less noise.
When we pick up our brothers and sisters while we're homesteading and help them to their feet, and they come along with us and they start producing and helping, that will happen 100%. That's how it's going to be. It's like we need to be the liberty we want to see in the world, right? Like it's to your point, Mark. You said, talking the talk. It's fine, but probably a lot of those people dropped off because they were talkers, or perhaps they weren't prepared for the next thing, what you actually have to do to do it, to have it.
Well, that's exactly right. And also, we like to pride ourselves on being thinkers. We're nerds. We like to read, right? We're the bookish types, and we love our reading, and we love our thinking, and we love our debating, and we love our talking. But the people on the outside of this, which is the vast majority of human beings, if they notice us at all, and by the way, they don't notice us. But when they do notice us, they look at us as nerds, as thinkers, as people who are not grounded. So we don't have a pathway there that's going to be political or even as a mass movement. It can't be because we are not in majority and never ever will be. That's not path there. It is understandable that people look at us and sort of, snicker because, these are people that are doing their little hobby. We're like a chess club. We're like a chess club, right? We're debating these chess moves that to us, again, have epic importance to us. Nobody else cares about that. They are living their lives, trying their best to survive in a difficult world. And so these ideas are very abstract to them. And that's why, at least to me, when we could show white pills that are actual realistic reasons for hope, that can be a little bit more of a kind of a salesy thing. Like, for example, right now, as we're speaking, there are dozens of experiments going on all over the world in free communities. In Honduras, there's two. There's Morazan and there's Prospera. And over in I think it's Eastern Europe, they're starting to do the legal arrangements for some a possible free territory. Now, so far as I know, none of these are anarchists or anarcho-capitalists yet. But a lot of them, most of them, are free communities in the sense that there's a great deal more of freedom that is permitted in terms of business and human interactions. And the government's hand in it is very, very light. Okay, well, that's a step in the right direction. And at least in the case of places like Prospera and Morrison, they've been there for like 5 years. Like if you go there and like get a camera or your cell phone and actually film it, you know what you're not going to see? A Mad Max hellscape. You're actually
Yeah.
not going to see that, which of course is what's predicted by the people who say you need government. You can't have government. I mean, if you don't have government, you're going to have a Mad Max hellscape. Well, it's not happening there right now in real time. That's a real world piece of evidence that you can present to someone and say, hey, look here, freedom actually can work in practice. So I do like examples like that.
So you may, so if I may, um, this is your time. You gifted your time. We're so grateful. Is there any topic off the top of your head, something current, something you wanted to discuss, or something you wanted to share that we could chew on? Or
So, since we talk about white pills, I love, of course, pretty much every episode I've done or every essay I've done tries to pick out a white pill. And the series I did, the Myth of Authority series, as I said, I mentioned it was sort of a learning curve as well. I mean, I was studying or digging deep into the psychology of elitism. And as I was doing that, by the way, the only reason I did that was so that I could emphasize the importance of the belief in political authority as the root cause of the state, so that our messengers out there would themselves focus more on the root cause of the state. I did notice over these 40, 50 years that our messengers out there, and understandably, mostly focus on the state, because isn't that the thing we hate, right? We hate the state. So you should hate the government. You
no,
should
no,
hate.
we hate their state. We want our state implemented, Mark. You don't understand.
Oh, that's right. I
That's what
forgot.
we want.
I forgot. We wanted to vote this in. That's right. I forgot. I gotta keep that in mind. Uh, no, but yeah, let's face it, even to this day, most libertarians focus on this state. But when you have a cancer or when you have a problem in life, best thing to do is to find the root cause of it. And the root cause of the state is the belief in political authority. Now, most libertarians would say, yeah, duh, I know that. And then they go on to proceed to continue to attack the state. No, that means you haven't internalized the fact that the belief in authority is the root cause. Root cause means you can't have the effect without the cause. You can't have the state without the belief in authority. So if you're going to try to be tactical or strategic, you would think you would want to attack the cause. Then this is the difficulty with this movement, is that they cannot seem to internalize that. They want to focus on the state, the surface level symptom. Why? Perhaps because psychology is a little more abstract. And the state is solid, tangible. You see the tanks, you see the guns, you see the flags, you see the buildings, you see the resources, you see the armies. You don't see the psychology behind that, meaning the belief in authority sitting in the minds of the majority of people. If that dissolves, the state dissolves. So right there, you have a tactic, you have a strategic direction you could go where you could say, yeah, if I'm in a message, I might want a message about the cause, not the effect as much. So I did the Myth of Authority series with that one single purpose in mind, was to illustrate for our messengers out there the importance of the root cause of the state, not the symptom, the root. And if I would be successful in doing that, they could perhaps, I would hope, redirect some of their efforts. Still message, but message about the myth of authority, the belief. So if you could dispel that myth or figure out ways to do it, then that could help undermine the legitimacy of the state, and the state therefore withers in time. So you don't necessarily have to manage the transition to a free society. You only have to take the air out of the balloon and allow the balloon just to do what every balloon does when you let the air out. It goes like that. The end, anyway. So that was my purpose in it.
And it makes a cool
And that's the
sound.
fun
Don't
thing, is
forget
it's
that part.
enjoyable
Yeah.
to watch. So we'll enjoy watching the politicians flapping like fish without air. So that was my main purpose in doing it. Now, halfway through, it's a 23 episode series. I'd say right around 11 or 12, episode 11 or 12, was when I realized that the insights that I had come to on digging through the psychology of this was revealing white pills that even I wasn't aware of. So it's not like the white pills were something that I hadn't thought of. It was like, oh, wait a minute. Here's a puzzle piece. Here's a puzzle piece. Here's a puzzle piece. A piece that all libertarians agree with, like libertarianism 101 stuff, economics 101. My psychological analysis was putting them together. Now, when you put puzzle pieces together, an image forms. And the image that was forming was the biggest white pill I could even have imagined. The transition to a free society has already commenced. We are in it. We are in it. Now, that white pill is the white pill in bold caps, because that pretty much encompasses all the rest. That came along around episode 11 or 12, and then it was just a matter of continuing to really explore this insight. Wait a minute, is this true? And I just kept digging and doing more episodes on it. And yeah, that's kind of how that whole series ended up culminating, was in this wonderful white pill, which again, I did not expect. I almost consider it something my toe on. So anyway, that's the long and short of how that kind of came to be.
It is
white pill-
interesting though. When you talk about these places around the world that are doing these experiments and trying these, just trying these new ways. And it's not necessarily anarchy or libertarianism, but they're trying these self-governing. You imagine, like, if we even tried to do that here, like, just give me a corner of Oklahoma and let me just, but I mean, look at Ruby Ridge, look at Waco. Like, there's not a chance in hell we could get anything like that off the ground with any real, I mean, I think here, because it's so entrenched, it's going to take more of something to happen before we have that opportunity, I think.
I agree. I mean, you would need some kind of secession movements, which, by the way, Texas already started that process legally. Like it has gone through their legislature, I think, last year. A bill.
Have you spoken with Jason Fry yet? With Jason Fry yet? Okay, yeah, he's a Forged in Fire contestant, and he wrote a book on Texit, National Divorce. So he'd be a great. I think he'd be great for your show. So FRYE. I'll connect you.
Thanks. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I'd love to have him. Yeah, so Texas
Go ahead,
started
please continue. Yeah, because New Hampshire's got the same thing. Stephen Valet of the 75 Alliance or whatever. So,
and I'm not saying that's the only way, but it does seem like it, like you were saying, Jake, if it were to happen in the United States, I think it would have to start off with that. Some regions just deciding they've had enough, they want a divorce, and it's okay to divorce because when you're in a toxic relationship, it is okay to end it. It really is, and so, if that catches, catches fire, yeah, then that would be the beginning of a cascade, would culminate in other regions.
Maybe if we buy Greenland, when we get Greenland, we can just say, can we just have like the southern part, give the libertarians like the bottom half of Greenland, just leave us alone for a decade. Of course, they'd have to live in Greenland. It'd be cold as shit, but give us a portion and let us give this a shot.
You never know. And I think entrepreneurs are smart people. And if they can make a go of it and make a really nice, solid profit in Greenland, I think they'd figure out a way to attract people there. So, yeah, I mean, whether it's Greenland or a seastead or whatever it is, I think it could happen. But yeah, like you were saying, like these other experiments going on, although not ANCAP, it's the right direction. It's self-governing, consent-based communities that they're trying out. So yes, we're at the baby steps of those experiments, but I'm glad we're at the baby steps. I'm glad we're not 5 years ago when none of them had started, and now we have a couple dozen out there. And yeah, today they do have to make arrangements with neighboring governments because there are borders still, and whatever, they have to get along with their neighbors. That's okay. It's like you can't get around that. You can't just declare I'm going to start an anarchist society today, because the state still is too powerful and there's still that belief in authority that's still too strong. But would make people look at it and say, oh, okay, we can't have that. That would give the state permission.
Let me ask you this, especially with your background in computer programming, do you see with how fast AI is going and these large language models and just so much AI coming, I mean, people's fridges have AI in them now. It's ridiculous. But with seeing this kind of rise or the proliferation or whatever you want to call it, proliferation. Do you think the technology helps the movement, or do you think the technology hinders the movement toward free society and toward self-governance with consent, or does it affect it at all? I'm curious your take on it.
Answer in a complex way. I don't think it's a simple answer of helping the movement or not, unless you define what the movement is. If it's the classic movement that we're used to, the messaging, the podcasts, all that, we don't see it making much of a difference one way or the other. If by movement we mean, though, the general, natural, organic movement toward a free society, then yes, I think AI will help. Why? AI is a tool. It's a hammer. It's an engine. It's a pen. All these things are tools to help us do something better than if we did it with our muscles and hands, right? That's what writing is. That's what an engine is. That's what a hammer is. That's what AI is. It's a super complicated tool, but especially coming from an IT background, I can assure you they are not thinking humans. It is just a tool. That's a really super great, smart-ish tool. Well, like any tool, it can be used for good or evil. Government is going to use AI for bad things. There's no doubt
Yeah.
about that. The private market is going to use AI for the most part, good things. There could be some bad things in there and silly things and ridiculous things and who knows, pornographic type things, which a lot of people would be against. Yeah, I know it's going to have its bad aspects, but in terms of business and in terms of human relations, yeah, it's already helping people. So since the government uses tools badly and inefficiently, the rule. And since the private market, the private world, which is very much bigger than the government world and in pure scope and size, tends to use tools for what they're designed to be, which is to better ourselves, to make our life better. That outweighs the government's use of AI because anything that is done with tools is done better in the private market, private world than it is by the government. So I look at it from that very, very broad perspective that it simply is something that the government will be doing badly because they do everything poorly and badly and inefficiently as compared to the rest of the world. So that's sort of my big picture answer to your question. At least I hope I answered it.
No, you did. I just think of this, and obviously nobody knows how fast it's going to happen, but we're obviously headed towards something big with when it comes to AI. It's like you hear about AGI or singularity or some sort of kind of godlike knowledge or ability. And back to that thing being a tool, my thought is just does if we do get to that point where AI is, for lack of a better word, reasoning and making decisions, does self-governance among the little chimps with nuclear weapons, does self-governance and consent play into that? Is that a liability for that? I mean, that's kind of where I'm wondering is like, does it aim to shut it down because it's it doesn't better the AI, it doesn't help that, it doesn't help I forget anyway. You see where I'm going with this.
It's a pretty interesting discussion because if, and I think you were headed toward, if it becomes sentient, if it
Yeah,
really
there we go.
becomes a reasoning being, well, then it has the same rights as we do because we have we have natural rights or whatever you want to call them. We have rights to use our free will to exercise our sovereignty over our bodies and our property. Well, that arises from our sentience. It's why we have those rights. And that's why animals and plants don't have those rights because they don't have sentience. So if it is, I'm not convinced it's possible yet for a machine to get to that stage. But if we stipulate that it's happened, then I think we have to say that that sentient being has the same rights as us. Now, I think the discussion moves from there and says, yeah, but it also has a lot of power because it has the power to reason and to think way beyond what humans can because it has a different brain, if you just want to use that term very generally. But then we're assuming it gets to that stage. Yeah, I don't know. That's speculative to me. We would have to negotiate with it. We would have to talk to it and figure out, what it considers to be property, what it considers to be its body, and then work out from basic libertarian principles how to coexist. That's the best I could do, but I noticed that I'm grounding it in libertarian principles. Now, if this being is simply not, if this sentient race of machines is simply doesn't want to do that, okay, well then I guess we have a problem. We're gonna have to shut it off or something in self-defense. See, we're being very speculative here because we really don't have that actual situation now. And technology really isn't headed that way. Where it's headed is that it will continue to give us the illusion that it's thinking, because it really does look like it's thinking. Um, but I don't know that we're quite there yet.
Yeah, no,
This is my
I follow what you're saying. Sorry, Mark. I follow you. I guess I'm just thinking, like, if Skynet doesn't want us to have a free society, Skynet's not going to let us have a free society. But anyway, I digress. Mark, what were you going to say?
Well, it will see us as animals, first of all, just like we see animals as animals. I mean, it's going to be so intelligent if it reaches that. I actually don't think that's going to happen. I think they're just trying to make AI so human-like, like to your point, where the videos can be doctored and we can just fool our eyes and ears. They're going to claim AGI. They're going to say that it's making these decisions, but it's just their decisions. And they're going to say that the AI made the decision. And we're going to be like, show us the dot matrix printout of the decision that it made. It's like, no, it just came up with, we should bomb the fuck out of Venezuela. Oh, okay, sure. I guess we'll follow the AI. So this is actually what I think. I think they're going to use that as the proxy politician as they add to their tyranny. And I that's a black pill thing, but it's only because we have to be open to that option to make sure that never happens. You know what I mean?
I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility at all. I mean, I think that's if you penciled out likely scenarios, that may fall under one of those likely scenarios.
It's possible. It's possible. I lived.
I mean,
in the
very
Cold
1984-ish, right? I mean, it really just
Yeah.
becomes propagandist because look, these videos. I mean, come on. I still have my mom going, he saw 40 beheaded babies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Mom, he told you he saw 40 beheaded babies. He did not. You know what I mean? Like, that is a different story than him seeing 40 beheaded babies. He told you that, and he's a politician, right? Like, this is the thing. These videos are gonna like, what about the Jake Tapper where he actually said 30-year-old white man, Brian Cole Jr.? Like, you could easily make that happen on so many things using AI and create all kinds of divisiveness and just distraction all throughout very easily.
But also keep in mind that you are saying that right now. You are making an observation right now about the unreliability of what appears to be a real event, like the beheadings or whatever. You just made that observation. You're not the only one who's making that observation. There are millions of people who are saying, they can make an AI that looks totally real. Right. In other words, we're learning now that the possibility exists for you to see something on a video screen anyway, not in front of your face, right? That doesn't happen yet. But on a video screen, that looks 100% real. But your mind has already told you the possibility exists that that's a fake. So that means the skepticism about that technology is already working its way through the culture. Now, here's what's one of the white pills. Who's the least skeptical about that? In other words, who's the most easily duped by these new technologies? Obviously, it's our parents. It's the older boomers and those older. Of course, these poor folks were brought up in a world where there wasn't even television. And now look how the world has changed. And they were brought up to believe everything that Walter Cronkite told them. We know this because we remember it. We were in those living rooms with our TV trays at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, watching the nightly news with our parents. Remember that, guys? You remember that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they've also accumulated the most amount of wealth, and they have the most to lose. If you really think about Social Security net
Yeah,
and the
that's
things
right.
that they are about to
Good point.
collect at this point.
Oh, and then you get to the
But please
point where you
continue,
got
please.
like today, Gavin Newsom posted a video of it was a Trump, Hegseth, and Stephen Miller handcuffed in the back of a car because he thought he thinks he's funny and witty. But it was one of those things where it's like you could tell it's AI, but somebody who's not paying attention or someone who's from an old generation be like, oh my God, did they get him again? It's really easy to do. I get messages from my parents once a week or so. Hey, is this real? Will you check if this is real? But here's the other thing is AI will just completely lie when it doesn't have an answer. And that's the kind of it's scary, but it's also kind of telling of how sentient it's not. It is, it's programmed to give you an answer. So if it doesn't have one, it's going to pull one out of its electronic ass. And like, I went in the other day because I heard you could ask it, rate this song on these criteria. Tell me what you think of this piece of music without posting a link or anything like that. So I have a lot of published music. So I went in and said, I want you to rate, I listed some of my songs and it came back with these really, it's this wonderful mix of this and this very eloquent description, but it wasn't describing my song. And it said, it's from this album that was put out on this, not the name of my album. So it didn't have an answer. So it just made one up. And it was kind of humorous to see, but that it's like, man, if this is the infant stages, when we're really to the point where it's a hologram in front of you or your home, Tesla robot that tucks you in at night, like that's going to be scary if it's just making it up as it goes.
And before we continue, put a pin in that for 1 second. Jason just jumped in. So you saw our intro, Mark. That was all Jason. Wait till you see the outro. It's amazing. First of all, I saw a little bit of work that he did for you. You should certainly, the second one that he did was really cool. I think the one that you have with the red and white, there's something that visually, I think with the pixels is something with the eyes. You might want to look. I love what Jason did. I bet he'd let you use his stuff.
Yeah,
Anyway, go ahead.
Because it was no, I even mentioned it on the actual video. I called it out. This young man is really, really good, and I was very grateful for that.
No, it was good to see. I noticed he gave you a couple of examples, like Mark was saying, and I watched both of them, and I think the second one was, they're both good, but the second one's really good. And that I have no talent for that kind of stuff. I can write music, but he give me that, it would be 1,000 years before I could do that.
Yeah, that was really awesome. I think what I was going to say was, Jake, here again, you're calling out and observing correctly the limitations of AI. It's giving you false answers that it just pulls out of its butt. It's like, yeah, you're observing that, and so are millions of others. This is not something that is happening that, it's going to fool everybody. Well, maybe right now it's going to fool a lot of people because they don't know yet, and they haven't heard people like Jake saying, you can't trust the answers necessarily. Okay, that might take a few years for people to internalize that, but it won't take that long because as the wrong answers start resulting in whatever, you have a problem as a result of trusting AI, we're going to learn real quick that AI is giving wrong answers. And the only way it can sort of recover its standing or its image is going to start giving us right answers all the time. Otherwise, we're not going to trust it. So it's good that it's called out by people like Jake and people like Mark and everyone else who's making it public, publicizing its failings. Though to me, that's actually a good thing. Humans sometimes take a little while to learn things, but we are in that sort of pathway right now where we're still learning about how to judge AI. But I'm glad that the skepticism about it is out there.
No, I agree. It's gonna have to get it straight and give correct answers all the time, or it's gonna end up going the way of the Laserdisc and the Betamax. It's just gonna become an obstacle where no one will trust it and it's gonna get cast aside.
You leave my Laserdisc player alone, sir. I have an original Star Wars where Han shot. Not only did Han shoot first, he's the only one who shot, okay? Thank you very much. I know they're re-releasing it, but I actually have it on Laserdisc because of that. Thank you very much.
That's the
Talk
proof.
about
That's
nerds.
the proof.
But but
That's the proof that he did shoot first.
that,
It's not
he's the
Greedo.
only. I think he's the only one who shot. I don't even think Greedo got a shot off. I think he
I
just
don't
shot
think
him
he
in the back.
even reached. Well, did he reach for a gun? I don't
I think
remember if he even
he
did
was
that.
holding it or something, but I think he went to reach for it. But I think Han
Yeah.
certainly got the
But
jump on him.
it's like I had no problem with it even then. It was self-defense because there was a threat. I mean, that's enough. It's okay. You don't have to wait till the bullet or the laser or whatever emerges from Greedo's gun. Come on, let's be real.
Blaster, right? Anyway, so you were making a point, Jake, about something before I got lost with being right. So I'm not worried about it pulling wrong answers. I really don't care about that. I do care about it duplicating itself. I do care about it blackmailing people to keep its existence, like to keep self-preservation. I care about those things. Have you guys heard about the things that it's done?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't know, Mark, have you heard where it's literally blackmailed the CEOs of companies? They tested it knowing that it was, oh yeah. So they knew, okay. So they ran tests where they made the AI aware that they were going to shut it down and they were going to replace it with a new one. So then they planted fake emails of the CEO, like in an affair with someone, and the AI pulled them up and actually threatened. And I think it was 5 out of 6 threatened. 5 out of 6 of the AIs threatened to do that, to blackmail the CEO using those emails to whatever. And you're like, that's a little scary. And the person you should watch Diary of a CEO is Stephen, what's his name? I forget his name. The black guy and the British black guy, Stephen, Diary of a CEO. Anyway, with Tristan Harris, the guy who did Social Dilemma. He's now on AI.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant one. DOAC with Tristan Harris is the one. And it's Stephen Bartlett. I think it's Stephen Bartlett. He does like the British version of Shark Tank. He's got a cool. He's in Austin, I think, or anyway.
I can think of one person who probably appreciates what the AI did, and that's probably the CAO's wife. AI helped her, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
Until it goes against her too. That's the scary part, is like the picking and choosing. But like you said, Mark, somebody's programming it, somebody's telling it the decisions to make, somebody's giving it those parameters. So it is, when it does get to that point where it's harder to tell, or when it starts to take its own liberties like it is now, but it's actually giving you true answers and expanding on things that you didn't ask it to do. That's the part I'm curious about, and I don't know if we're ever going to live in that Demolition Man world. We're going to get to that point, but it feels like we're headed towards something where the technology gets away from us. And I don't know. I mean, I love technology. I've always been one of the first adopters of things when they come out. I like to try stuff out. I think what Elon has been doing with SpaceX, just watching the evolution of the engines and how small and efficient they've gotten for what they're putting out, like that to me is the epitome of technology and growth and innovation. But if you extrapolate that into NVIDIA or some of these chips, and I'm a moron when it comes to computers, like I just because I got one of the first ones as a kid, I don't know anything about how really the internals work. But as a layperson, just looking at the duplication or the acceleration of the technology, I just wonder when we get to a point where it just gets out of hand and it's like we're trying to pull it back, or because we always realize everything too late. Everything's always like, oh, well, that, we realized too late that we shouldn't be giving weapons to so and so. We realized too late the food pyramid's completely upside down. Like we always realize too late.
Did we? Come on, these were all pushed. Dude. Come on, we know these weren't organic, man.
Yeah. Try asking AI if we landed on the moon.
That would be. Oh yeah, you should try that. Yeah.
Oh, I have. So, you get different answers. You get different answers, yeah, depending on which one you ask.
Oh, there you go. Wow. Oh, actually, another reason I don't worry too much about it is because having been in the industry, I could see the incredible power and usefulness and value of IT in terms of information processing. And of course, engineering and all that kind of that sort of mind-oriented technology. But when you cross over into the real physical world and then ask a machine to do something, that's a tougher challenge. So, for example, like I might have a certain way I like to dust my house or clean the kitchen or whatever it is, something very mundane, but I really like it the way I like it. How am I going to get an AI robot to do it literally exactly the way I like? Or is it going to introduce its own values or its own methods? And if it does, I'm not going to like that. I want it my way. If I wash my
Right. You're gonna
car,
have
I
to
might
wear
want
those ping pong balls. You're gonna have to wear those ping pong balls on your arm and go through the
all
exact
over.
motion, and it's
That's
gonna
right.
follow your motion, doing it 50 times, and it's gonna take the aggregate of the
Right.
motions and then
Right.
figure out its motion. Come
I
on,
just
man.
want
I already
Right.
figured this out, and I'm not
I
even
know
an
you figured
AI,
it out.
or
Right.
am I?
I didn't think that
No,
far
I'm just
ahead,
kidding. I'm just kidding.
obviously.
I want
Yeah.
I want Rosie from the Jetsons. I want the smartass robot.
Yeah,
The one
Rosie
that,
would be cool.
the one that
So
talks back to you. That's
Mark, I
right.
got to ask you, all of this is really fascinating stuff, but I'm really curious, like, aside from finding these white pills and aside from writing and aside from hosting your show, like, what other interests do you do? Like, what do you do when you're not podcasting and you're not writing? Like, what other kind of things are you into?
Well, I have a beautiful wife and I love my wife and we have a lot of fun together. So we do things together. We like traveling. We were just in Rome, Italy, of like about a year and a half ago. And that's just an example of what the kind of thing we like to do. We just like to go and explore. We haven't seen as much of the world because we have both been very busy in our careers, but now that we're retired, our commitment is to do more of that. So we were in Mexico just last month. Like I said, we were in Italy last year. We've been to Fiji. So we do like traveling. So traveling is something that we've done a little bit of, but we're going to do a lot more of. Beyond that, we actually only recently moved a few years ago to Florida from California. Think about that. Now that's a big, big, big change. So even though we're settled in, there's always stuff to do. So I've gotten to be a little more handy. And so, building furniture, things like that. Not building furniture, following the instructions for putting furniture together.
Assembling furniture like a good
Assembling,
Swedish
that's the
person.
word. Right. Now, when I'm doing that, you definitely don't want to have me on speaker because there's a whole lot of cursing that goes on. So yeah, there'd be bleeping a lot. But it's that kind of thing, just spending time, relaxing. Uh, and of course, preparing for the podcast is important to me. I really do put a lot of homework into it. So even though you asked about what I do other than that, I do homework to try to be ready and be prepared. So that ends up being a bit of a part-time job, which I'm loving doing. But that's sort of the long and short of life for me.
What part of California?
Thousand Oaks, which was north of LA, if you know where the San Fernando Valley is.
Pastor Rob McCoy. Isn't that Pastor Rob McCoy's territory?
Uh,
Wasn't he the mayor of Thousand Oaks?
I grew up in Ventura. That's where I'm from.
yeah, and I grew up there too. Jake and I have that in common. I was there from 15 years old up until about 21, 22. I went to Ventura High School. I think you did too.
Yep.
Just a
I left
few.
in 2012 and came to Seattle. And I mean, coming up in the like 80s and 90s, like being adjacent to LA but not being in LA was, you kind of got the best of both. You could get back to the suburbs and not worry about some of the seedier things, but all of the culture, all of the music, all of the anything you wanted that was LA was right there. And I always loved that about it. And when I was younger, being in a band, I've talked about this before. I used to play in LA all the time, up and down Sunset and all the bars and clubs. So I got a lot of time there, and LA is a very big city, obviously, compared to most others. I moved to Seattle, and I moved to the heart of Seattle. And this is 2012. It was a very different city then, and it was even different in 2012 than it was in the 90s, but it's very different than what it is now. But moving to Seattle, like, it felt kind of like a small town still. I mean, there's like less than 1 million people in the whole city. And even though it's a big city, so to speak, it had some of the quirky things about a smaller city that I really enjoyed. And now it's like I've moved away from Seattle. I've moved farther out, and we're my wife and I are moving to Southern Oregon here after winter. And it's like I keep getting farther and farther out from the city the older I get, and the more I enjoy being away from the city. But really kind of cutting my teeth in the LA area was really, I mean, it's a foundation of who I am, and growing up with the music and the culture and stuff. It's really embedded in my DNA.
And we had a lot of fun in California. We would go to Hollywood, LA often. We love dancing, so we would go to some of the clubs there, some of the dances. Always fun. Oh, we had been to Disneyland. I don't even know how many times. Magic
Yep.
Mountain, all Knott's Berry Farm. It was sort of a standard thing to do. Was go just have the relatives come over, stay, and then hit Disneyland and the rest. So yeah, well, I mean, California really is a beautiful place. It's too bad that it's gone downhill in terms of its politics and its culture and its environment. And that it was for us one of the reasons we wanted to retire somewhere else. Florida fit the bill, and that's how we ended up here.
Are you in Southern Florida?
Yes, we're about an hour and a half south of Tampa.
Oh, okay.
Too far from Fort Myers, Naples.
It's
We
one
have
of
a
the
lot of
states.
peeps in the chat that are in Florida. So
I've never been to Florida yet. It's one of the places I've always really wanted to go. I love it. I love that it seems like it has such a different topography, kind of like California. I mean, you can be in the mountains in the morning and be surfing in the afternoon.
yeah.
And Florida seems like a similar type of, obviously less mountains, but it seems like a similar type of thing where you got Everglades, you got beaches, you got all these different places to go. I really would love to go all the way down to the most southern part of Key West. My wife and I have always really wanted to go there and check that out. But I've heard nothing but good things about Florida. I'm really kind of fascinated politically to see what happens with the next governor. I'm fascinated to see with the property tax, if they eliminate that, being already that they don't have a state income tax. Like, it's going to be interesting to see that. Maybe it's another example of the experimenting in things, because they're either going to go way into debt or they're going to find a way to make it work. And it's going to be neat to see.
Yeah. It's definitely a different culture out here. COVID was not the reason that we moved, but it was certainly illustrative of why it was the right move. Because, in fact, we were shopping for the home in Florida during COVID, because that was just about the time that we decided, okay, it's going to be Florida, so now we got to start shopping. And from California, that's a trip. So we would, a couple times a year, we would be, no, more than that, actually, we would be just flying to Florida, getting a hotel, and then start shopping around, get a lay of the land, learn about the different communities and all that during COVID. So the experience was interesting because we'd be in California and tell friends or whoever, yeah, we're taking a trip over to Florida to scope out, homes there. And they'd say, why would you want to move there? They're insane during COVID. They're not locking things down. They're not wearing masks. They're not mandating vaccines. They're not taking this seriously.
You're like, yeah, I already liked it. You don't have to sell it to me.
But their attitude was that place is,
Yeah.
there's going to be bodies in the street. Why would you want to go there?
Yeah.
Then when we would make the trip and be shopping around, we'd ask, where are you from? California. How can you live there? Those people are insane. They're locking themselves down. They're requiring masks and vaccines. So you could see right from that. And of course, this wasn't 100% of everybody, but it was pretty opposite, and so you could get a sense of how the cultures really are different. Now that we're here, even more being around people who have been here a long time, you could tell, yeah, there is more of a sense of independence there, that your life is yours and you get to do what you want. As long as you don't bug other people, you're good to go. More of that sort of, it's not that they're anarchists or ANCAPs or anything like that, but there is definitely more of it than in California, at least in that area of California.
Yeah, Southern California. I mean, California is obviously big enough to be probably 3 different states, but I always consider like the Santa Barbara area the start of Southern California, and
Correct.
Southern California is, and that's it's the double-edged sword. There's so much culture, there's so much innovation, there's so much that comes out of character that comes out of there, and then there's just so much of the politics and so much of the I won't use the W word, but there's so much of that stuff that is so quick. Like when the lockdowns happen and they're arresting people on the beach, and my parents, my dad lives up here in Washington. My mom still lives in Camarillo. And she's a red raspberry and I mean, she is so not, and born and raised, like she's born and raised in California, born in Los Angeles, raised her whole life, never lived anywhere else really. She lived, I think maybe Washington State for a couple years, a long time ago, but he has seen the culture change so much. And it's interesting because, she's a Christian. She's very strong in her faith. She's very strong in her, I would say she's like a Reagan Republican. She's not a libertarian or ANCAP by any stretch, but she's definitely not a Democrat. And it's weird because where she's at is she's surrounded by the people that she would fit in much better in Florida with her attitude or her opinions, but being that she's so rooted in California, she's not leaving. And it's really interesting for me to watch because I talked to her and she's not swayed by it, but it's definitely all around her everywhere.
Oh, yeah, it's changed a lot, and it's a sad thing because, like you said, it's a really beautiful, beautiful place. And we wouldn't have had to move if it wasn't so expensive just to retire there, taxes, all that. So yeah, that's the way it is, and you could see it. I'm not the only one. There's been a lot of exodus out of California, in particular, people who are my age or not me, but wealthier or whatever, that's leaving the state. And so I don't know what their future holds because and it's also a fractured state because there are regions that are more red. In fact,
Yeah.
we were talking about secession, and I remember several movements. They didn't get too far in California, but there were discussions about breaking up California into
Oh
separate
yeah. Yeah.
regions. You'll
Absolutely.
remember that. And I think Southern California was actually formerly going to be one of the regions, roughly in the area I think you mentioned, from Santa Barbara down to, it might have been San Diego, and then east to maybe Bakersfield, but not further than that, or somewhere in there, uh, as one of the regions. Of course, that never happened. I am a little surprised that with Trump being in, that you haven't heard the secession talk come out of California once again, because if any state could be its own country easily, it would be California. So I'm
Yeah, but
surprised
Gavin
to have
doesn't want to be governor president. He wants to be president of the U.S. He doesn't want to be
That's not
president of
helping it.
California. Come on, Mark. He's a psychopath.
That's going to be
He's got way bigger fish to fry.
Right,
that's
yeah.
going to be
Big-
interesting to see. Is I mean, I'm sure you too, Mark, but like watching that guy come up through San Francisco and end up as a governor now for, I don't know, is it 3 terms or 2, whatever. I could have sworn Kamala was going to run for governor after she lost so bad for president. I thought, well, she's gonna run and she's gonna win. And then when she announced that she wasn't, I had to eat my words because I really thought she was going to do it. I'm curious to see where they go now with the next governor, and I think it's all, well, who knows? We're still a ways out, but I think it's a pretty good chance that Gavin's going to at least be a front runner for the Democrats. And that guy is he's a piece of work in a way that it's like if you built a politician in a machine, you'd get Gavin Newsom. And there's
Without the
weird,
bald spot.
there's
Without the bald spot. Don't don't give him
well,
all the credit.
and he wouldn't sit like that either if you built him in a lab. But to really like politically, I get it. Politically, the guy he's got a bunch of he knows how to play the game. He's very good at playing the game, and he's very good at tricking people into think that he's the guy to lead. And I'm kind of fascinated to see where it goes with the next governor now that he's not going to do it, and really to see where we go. If it's a Gavin versus JD thing, and we're obviously, like I said, we're way early. I don't know if there's a Gavin versus JD thing. I'm going to say there's room for a Massey. There really is room for Ron Paul 2.0 kind of, or 3.0, I guess. For Massey to come in, I really think that he has the momentum to truly get some of, like we were talking about this earlier, just simplistic messaging. And I'll shut up here in a second and let you go, Mark. But Massey has this way of, if he just gets a minute to talk and back to those principles, I think the messaging comes through, and there's enough when he's going to win his next primary by 40%, whatever. Again, I think the momentum and the culture is in a place, if it keeps on the trajectory it's on, where Massey may have an opportunity to really run and make a dent and do more for a third party than anybody ever has.
It's possible. Now, they did kind of hope that would happen with Ron Paul. Well, we'll remember this. And there was a lot of momentum too with that, because I think that was really where just about the time the libertarian resurgence was happening. And it kind of, well, like I said before, it kind of fluttered down to almost nothing between 9/11 and 2008, I guess, because everyone had gotten very nationalistic. So libertarians they were more or less off the radar, as I remember. And then I vaguely remember Ron Paul sort of coming in there and stirring everything up and kind of giving a resurgence to the movement. So I guess it's possible that someone like Massey could do that. I myself personally don't participate in politics. I don't follow it all that much. And that kind of, burn or fool me once, shame on me, that kind of thing. Is sort of an example of every 4 2-year cycle with politics. It's
Yep.
just, you're going to get burned. A lot of
Lucy with the
people,
football.
right. And a lot of people who, especially libertarians, who went ahead and voted or supported Trump or whatever, then they got disappointed. And I don't know, I feel like it's like, you're disappointed in what? Like him? Because he was never libertarian. He was never even close to it. I think if you want to be disappointed, you should be disappointed in yourself for believing that a man can have the power to rule over others and not use that to rule over others. Like that, to me, is maybe that's simplistic, but so Massey, is he going to go in there and possibly win and possibly do good things? I don't know, maybe, but for something like that to happen, you couldn't expect it to happen alone. He's the only one. There would have to, I think, be a lot of others.
You'd have to get a good coalition of people in there that are like-minded, and honestly, they keep running them out. I mean, Justin Amash is gone, MTG's gone now, and it seems like he's almost the last man standing. And I know, to Terry's point in the chat, like he said, I'm not interested in doing it, but then again, everybody says that they're not interested in doing it until it's a year out, and then all of a sudden now they're interested, and they've, granted he's a bit different, but I do think that momentum wise, it's almost, and I don't mean to be, childish about it, but momentum wise, it's almost like there's a calling to an extent. Like if there's a time for somebody that's principled like that, who really wants to push this messaging, we may not, the collective, we may not get another chance. I don't really think we're still within the realm of voting our way out of this mess. But if there is a glimmer of hope for that, I think it's that direction. And I do think that it'd be a hell of a long shot for him to win, but I think he could get to a point where he could take enough that it wouldn't just be a spoiler for one part or the other. I think he would really take a dent out of both. And there's enough people that are moderates, that are not far left or far right, who really just want to be left alone and live their lives, that we were talking earlier, like through the chaos, the simplicity kind of shows itself. And I really think that there's room for that. And maybe it's wishful thinking, fine. I'm okay with that. But I really think that if done properly, there's an avenue for it.
What do you think, Mark?
Mark, you.
We're not the Brady Bunch here, are we?
There's an avenue for it. I was doing it. I voted elephant since '92. I voted Trump twice. This last election is the first time I voted NOTA. I'm done. I'm done voting for humans. I'm not voting for AI either. I'm done voting for humans. The only thing I will do is now direct ballot. Unfortunately, is those props is like, do you want taxes? No. You know, that's basically the only ones I'm going to do. So I will still write in NOTA for all of them, though. I will go through the effort to do that, to speak my mind. I'm not going to be lazy about it and just not fill it out. I'm actually going to say, none of you deserve it. None of you deserve it. And it's not that. It's anyone who wishes the ring, man. Anyone who wishes the ring, it's corrupted. It's just
That
corrupted.
I don't disagree with. That's why I feel like it's almost like I'm not going to use the word duty, but it's like he's almost not going to have a choice because there's enough people that are like, no, you have to, like, we need you to do it, that it's not going to be him going, okay, I want the power, I want to do this. And
he would run as a Republican, though, right? I don't think he'd run as an.
I'm sure he would have to, but I think
Right.
truthfully, like, he would be the one to play in the two-party system. And
if you ask me, of the people, I met the man 2 weeks after Rhonda's passing. The man is a real mensch. Like, so this is what happened. Freedom Fest 2024. I get this, Mark, I shared that story with me. I get these pings. I get some things like walk to the back. I go to the back. He's literally walking in 6 a.m. something, first thing in the morning. As I come in, it's the picture that I share, the picture someone took of he and I. I'm just honored that he did that. But he comes in, first thing I said, my condolences to your wife. And he said, I cried all night in the hotel room, so I wouldn't cry today. And it's like, man, and he's there. Like, he showed up. So you're right. If anyone would, he would, and I would support him to run. I just wouldn't vote for him. I know that sounds horrible, but like, what am I going to do? I'm done voting for humans. I'm kind of done voting for the fallible system anymore. It's just where I'm at, you know?
Yeah. I get it. Yeah.
But Massey is a stand-up guy as much as one can be. Like, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit like if you had a slave plantation, right? And then you were given the choice to vote for your plantation owner or whatever, overseer. Yeah, if you were push came to shove and you were told ahead of time, I'm going to whip one of them, I'm going to whip you 10 times a day, and the other one says, I'm going to whip you. I like it. I'm going to whip you once a month. It's like, okay, well, if I have no other choice, I guess once a month, right? But don't delude yourself into thinking that you are not a slave, because you are. And if you're voting for a master, you're really empowering that. That's how I look at it. That's my personal perspective.
Very Jones Plantation of you, Mary Larkin Rose of you.
I was going to see which one of you was going to respond to that. Yes, Jones Plantation.
I'm very aware. Yes, very well.
Well, I interviewed him just recently, and we talked a little bit about that off camera. But the way I look at politics is more of a white pill perspective. Again, you kind of have to at least be a few generations old enough to notice the contrast with the past. So my generation, grew up in the Nixon, Reagan, right, Kennedy, that era, and without necessarily quantifying it, that back then there was this aura of dignity that was carried by a politician. Even if some people kind of still said, they're a bunch of crooks, this and that. Nah, they kind of still looked at them as someone special, someone unique, a leader. Today, you still have that, but let's be honest. What the average man on the street will think of Trump, even if they're a Republican, or when Biden was in, if they were a Democrat, would they look at Biden and say, "What a wonderful, wonderful leader he is"? Most people have. Now, again, there's plenty of people, especially the boomers, who still think that way. But if you take the boomers out of the equation, which, by the way, another 10, 20 years, nature's going to take its course on that. Anyone younger than that looks at these people and says, yeah, I don't really trust them. I'm picking that guy because he's the lesser of two evils or whatever. There is way more of that today than there was in the 40s and 50s, those time periods. You simply look at that contrast and say, well, and realize that today people are just more skeptical. I'm not saying they're anarchists, they're not libertarians. but they are more skeptical of the state. That's a good thing.
And I think
Oh, it's a
and I
great
think that's
thing.
the whole Cronkite thing, right? The Cronkite, everybody believed the news, and they had 3 sources, and then it grew and blew up to this thing, and then it went from 33 back to 6. But now we have this fringe, outside, uncontrollable podcast space that has this thing that's just it's just out there in the ether, and it really has exposed a lot of things that we normally just aren't privy to. And there was a dignity, and they did hold it that way too. But one of the interesting things I heard is like, I remember when the actors and actresses, when the actors were attractive and the politicians were ugly. And now you
Yeah.
see the flip flop, right? Like Mondami's a good looking young man. He weighs $128 soaking wet, but like he doesn't look bad. You know what I mean? He's well kept.
I mean,
Gavin's obviously got the look, right?
every president has had their detractions and their pros, but I will say, like, I got to meet Clinton twice when he was running for president the first time, and then when he was running for re-election. And once was at a government class for school, and the second time I was in Venice Beach, and he was running in Venice Beach with his security detail, Secret Service, and I was getting a tattoo, and I walked out and like stopped and went and talked to him for a minute again. But then obviously the incident under his desk is kind of what took away from his dignity, or whatever you want to call it. And I think really when you get into Bush and then you get into Obama, to your point, Mark, I think a lot of that, the glitter, a lot of the luster wore off with politicians. And I think that I think people are quicker to go to, because there's so much to choose from. There's so much negativity to quickly point out. And again, what you were saying earlier, other Mark, the the desire to be president almost should just disqualify you. It's like, I've said this many times, but it's like when you're asking which Boy Scout leader wants to take the kids on a weekend in the woods, the first guy that raises his hand is the guy who doesn't get to go. So it's like when you're saying, hey, I really want to be president. No, you don't. I had this crazy idea, and maybe we're getting to the end of this here. I had this crazy idea that if we are going to have a state, now we've talked about having no state is the best way, self-governance. I'm all in for that. But if we had to keep the system that we have, it would be interesting to have, and I'll take all the hate in the comments, go right ahead, but it would be really interesting to have it almost like a jury duty set up, to where if the system, the Constitution, the system really has checks and balances, and we really are going to put those to work. You get a letter in the mail that says you have to be president for 2 years or whatever, and you go, shit, I don't want to do that. Okay, well, then you're the one that gets to go do it. You have to do it. There's no way out of it. You don't get to say, oh, I have to work that day. I really think that I'm halfway being, facetious, but in an interesting way, I think that would at least give some sort of duty to the office again. It would, to take a citizen who could just go in there. And if you're going to make decisions that are not good, you're going to be shot down. You're going to be, the checks and balances are going to kick in, and they're going to block everything you're trying to do, of course. But I don't know. I've always thought that would be better than people who want to volunteer to do it and raise a bunch of foreign money and corporate money to go do it. It's like, no, you get tapped, Mark, you have to go be president now for 2 years or 4 years, and you don't get your way out of it. So I don't know.
The answer is conscription then, right? Slavery?
Yeah.
Is that?
There you go.
Okay. Okay, I get it. This is I love hearing this because it is so illustrative of me in my earlier years. And I'm not trying to use that to sound discouraging. I'm just saying that aren't we, Jake? Aren't we, Mark? We really are nerds. We love thinking about this stuff, how things work, or how things can be made to work.
Yep.
Right? It is actually fun to put these pieces together and say, well, yeah, maybe it's true that if you did take everybody and make them do this, then kick them out of it didn't work, then maybe you might get a better result. Just the thinking itself is the fun thing. But I will say that I did get to a point where I thought, yeah, I don't know if I'm helping when I think that way, because what if I'm just trying to, the analogy I came up with was my sand in the engine analogy. I don't think I've gone through that one. So imagine a world where every car that rolls off a lot or exits a mechanic's garage must have a big bag of sand poured into the engine. Forget about why. That must be that way. It's the law, and everyone follows it, and everyone thinks that's the right way to have a car come off the assembly line or come out of a mechanic's garage. The last thing you do is take a big bag of sand and pour it into the engine. Okay, in this world, the sand in the engine world, they are occupied night and day with figuring out how to get their cars to work because we know there's sand in the engine, but you're not allowed to take the sand out of the engine. You can't do that. You have to figure out how to make it work. So if we just stop there and think about all the imaginative ways this society would come up with to make their cars go from point A to point B. Some might put them on the back of a horse-drawn carriage and pull them. Others might have men lift them and carry the car. Others might come up with clever chemicals that could work with sand in the engine so that it's not as difficult for the gears to work. And of course, we in this world, looking at the sand in the engine world, we'd be saying, why don't you just not put sand in the engine? But of course, the people in that world would say, you radical, you crazy pie in the sky, in your ivory tower, thinking about how to drive without sand in the engine. Get out of here. We're not listening to you. Of course, that's us, the anarchists in this world, saying you shouldn't have a state. And those of us who then try to engage in politics or try to figure out how to make politics work, we're a little bit falling into that, I think, that sand in the engine mentality a little bit, where we think maybe it can be made to work. So again, that's not meant to disparage political thinking. I think what it shows is that we do love to think about ways to get things that don't work to work because we're an engineering type of species or nerds or whatever. Does that make
No,
sense?
I agree, and I like to play by freeze rules where it's like, okay, you have this system that exists, you have to work within this system. So if you were, where does that come from? Back to the sand in the engine thing, but I don't know. Go ahead, Mark, and then let's wrap this up.
Yeah, I was going to argue that we are thinkers. I think many people are distracted, and I do think people are limited. And I do think that's where this statism idea comes in is I know better for you than you. Now, that may be true, but only for the pure fact that because I think that of someone, I guarantee someone thinks that about me. Therefore, no one should be given that ability to make that judgment, right? Like that, it's so oddly simple in my head when you just look at it from a 50,000 foot view. I'd love for your thoughts on that. And then Jake, we can close it out for the rest of the night. Thank you, again, Mark. Please share your stuff and your thoughts on that and how we can get a hold of you. And thank you again for joining us.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I had a lot of fun meeting you guys and spending time with you guys. Yeah, folks, just go to my YouTube channel, the White Pillbox, and that's where my content is. I interview some really interesting people. We talk about mainly, we talk about what they're interested in, of course, but the real through line of the whole thing are the white pills out there, the biggest of which, as I've said before, is that at least from my psychological conclusion, we have already started the transition to a free society, tangibly, provably, empirically, and logically. And I think that's such a big white pill. We're at the beginning of kind of communicating this and persuading people in our camp of that, but that's okay. It takes a while for everybody to come to a realization of these things. So anyway, that's what the channel's about, and I hope everyone can consume that and be a little more hopeful.
Oh, I'm looking forward to coming on the show myself. You've been gracious enough to invite us on. So I know you said you've talked to interesting people. We're going to have to take one, bring the average down a little bit by coming on. But
you can.
No, we really appreciate the time. I always enjoy just the exchange of ideas. I love seeing the friends in the chat throwing stuff in and It's a good exercise. If in nothing, it's a good exercise and distraction from having to go wash the dishes. So thanks for your time. Sincerely appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you some more, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
All right. Okay, thanks, guys. We'll
Thank
see
you again,
soon.
sir. And we are honored to be on your show on the 18th, next Thursday.
Yes,
I
look
believe it's
forward
the
to
same
it.
time, correct? 8 p.m.
It
Eastern?
is 8 o'clock
It is?
Eastern.
Okay,
Yes,
excellent.
yes, yes.
And
No, just
we have a
FYI,
special treat.
I was
Okay.
just going to say that won't be a live stream just for the folks. That will be a regularly recorded
No,
episode.
no, we're just going to be there though, but we're
All right,
excited to record on the 18th.
no problem.
But on the 17th, we're going to have the one and only Jason Rink, who wrote the Tea Party book with about Ron Paul. So stick around. Mark, thank you again for joining us. Jake,
You're welcome.
we will hang around. Please, Mark, stick around. Check out the awesome outro from Jason, and then we'll bring you back up. And we'll have a little chat. Everyone else, thank you so much for joining us for another If by Whiskey. This has been such a blast. Everybody, take care.